This conference
Malaysia
will now be recorded.
Wednesday morning talk, which happens on the first Wednesday of every month. Our tagline used to be here or be square. And over the past few months, we've changed to the new norm of having this online due to the current situation. And today, we have taken a totally different topic, not related to the COVID situation, not related to anything. A very refreshing speaker who is with FIABCI for the third time. And before I introduce him, may I first call upon our president. First of all, congratulations to our president who has just been promoted to Deputy Managing Director or the COO SP Sedia, effective I think 1st September. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And on behalf of FIABCI Malaysia and everybody here, congratulations. And I would like to now invite him to probably give us a welcome speech. Yep. Over to you, President.
Thank you. Good morning, my fellow FIABCI members around the world. According to the list, we have at least 100 participants in this talk. It is come from USA, Seattle. Kun Lim is 5 o'clock in Seattle. We have around the world from US, Canada, India, Malaysia, and those in the Indonesia, Singapore are promised to lock it in soon. And I'd like to have this honor to welcome our distinguished speaker, inspiring architect Kun Lim from USA, to share with us his experience and inspiration and wisdom. And in this challenging time, it is so important that not only our members to concentrate to compete in pricing, but in terms of the design philosophy and creativity, it's so important to be able to compete in this market. It's a very challenging market, no doubt about it. But for last year, the property market is doing well, and I think those with the creativity are the one win the market shares. So therefore, we will continue to bring this sort of interesting subject and interesting speaker to inspire us. And before I pass it to Kun Lim, I think we have a gala of presidents of FIABCI and the principal member. From what I recorded until yesterday, we have Daniel Grosel Bajat, the past world presidents. We got Dato' Alan Tong, also FIABCI past presidents. We have Tan Sri Teo, FIABCI past Malaysia president, Tengku Aziz, the FIABCI past Malaysia president, and Dr. Yu, the FIABCI World Elected Board of Members. And on top of it, we have the principal member from PEPS, Mr. Lim. We have the RISM, Ms. Esther, EPK Evelyn Louis. And with all the participants, I hope today you are going to benefit from our friends and our inspirations. And you can, of course, we must invite ourselves to Seattle if we ever going to go to Seattle. And I think Kun Lim will be most happy to host us over there. Can I have the self-invitation also? Okay, thank you very much. Please take it over, Kun Lim.
Thank you very much, Dr. Koi. And
Kun Lim, before you start your presentation, maybe allow me to introduce a little bit more about FIABCI Malaysia.
Okay, sure.
So for those who are, a lot of you are attending for the first time. So FIABCI Malaysia has started this FIABCI morning talk every first Wednesday, which happens, if it is physical, then it will be breakfast, the best nasi lemak in Malaysia. Start at 8 to 9, so we will have breakfast, chit-chatting, networking, and then the session then starts at 9 to 10:30 with Q&A. And a few months ago, we have changed to this new model where it's virtual on the internet, so we will have to eat our own nasi lemak at home before 9 a.m. and then we'll come and join. For those who are non-Malaysians, nasi lemak is one of our specialty in Malaysia, and we look forward to have you to join us for the actual nasi lemak someday soon. And FIABCI Morning Talk started with the previous past presidents and Yao Teck Sang, and then we continue with it. And today I would like to thank one of our NC, Tete Ping, who actually introduced Kun Lim to give us to the talk today. Now, for a lot of you who are in the industry, Kun Lim is no stranger. But for those who are new, Kun Lim is an architect by profession, graduated from University of Houston in 1986. Currently, he's a design principal of Kun Lim Studio LLC in Seattle, USA, as well as the Kun Lim Architect in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. He's the immediate past chairman of Seattle International Architecture Forum and affiliate with the American Institute of Architects in Seattle. Today, he's presenting to us from Seattle, his home. And his portfolio covers Malaysia, USA, Indonesia, India, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, you name China, India, you probably name it, he have it. Closer to home, he was the lead designer and planner for our Putrajaya project, which he will be included in his presentation to us. And we really appreciate him coming today, joining us, miles and miles apart. And thanks to all those who have who is join in and going to join in all over the country. And with that, over to you, Kun Lim. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Lau, for the introduction. Thank you very much to Dr. Koi and FIABCI Malaysia for the invitation. In my presentation today, my focus will be on the design thinking and conceptual ideas on each one of my projects. And I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the functional, technical, socio-economic aspects of the project. Let me share my PowerPoint. I spent my childhood in Kubang Rotan, a farming village in Kedah, Malaysia. My parents were immigrants from China and they were farmers. We lived in a house built by my father. It was an eco-friendly house. First, all the materials, mostly timber, was sourced locally. Second, it was built in response to the harsh tropical climate. And there are windows over the house so that we can have a natural light and ventilation. And right in front of the house, we have a buffer zone, a second layer skin in between the outside and inside to help us to prevent, to help us from the harsh tropical sun and monsoon rain from time to time. It was a two-story house. The most interesting part of the house was the kitchen. The house has two stories, but the kitchen is only like single level, double walling, high ceiling, and so on. And I was amazed how my father, a farmer, 60+ years ago, can think about such an idea. So that in the kitchen used to be, it's always it's the hottest place in the whole house to introduce to natural light, natural ventilation to come in, and hot air will go up and go out from the house. It is almost like the wind tower in Dubai kind of concept. And the focus point in the kitchen was a water tank measuring 13 feet by 10 feet by 10 feet height. My father used it to store rainwater. It's also like rainwater harvesting. We use the rainwater for everyday use, for shower, cooking, and washing, and so on. And by the way, the baby in the photo, I'm the baby in the photograph. And outside our house in the compound, we raise chicken, we have a pigeon, we have a vegetable plot, and we even have a fish pond, and so on. And also in front of the house, there was a big compound. My parents used it for, to dry the rice after the harvesting, but it served as a communal space for us, for the neighbors. In the evening, the neighbors will come in, gather in the compound, chit-chat and so on, and the children will play in the compound. And outside the house, outside of the compound, is our family paddy field. In this picture was taken a long time ago my younger brother and I, we like dress up. It was like during Chinese New Year. When I was about 18 years old, after high school, I left Malaysia, went to Ireland, spent a year in Ireland. And then I started my architectural education, the first year architecture school. It's a University of Louisiana in Lafayette. And I spent a year there. And the second year, I transferred to Houston to continue the second year of the 5 years professional program in architecture. In the 1980s, Houston was probably the most modern city in the world. And in my third year, the first semester, I think it was an autumn semester of the architecture studies, we had 2 design assignments. These 2 short design assignments were probably the most important assignment in my life. It was instrumental in shaping the way I think about project, the way I design my buildings and township later on. We were given 2 projects. The first assignment was to design a photography retreat. In terms of gross build up, it was only like 10,000 square feet, but the site was a 100-acre site outside Houston, like what you see in this photograph in the middle of nowhere. So I asked myself, why 100 acres when it can be built in the downtown Houston in a small plot of land? In this first project, I learned about a few things. One, how can I place a building? In this case, I can easily place a building right near to the access. Access road, I decided to place in the middle of the 100-acre site for a few reasons. One, to me, the journey to the building, the approach to the building is as important as the building itself if you have the opportunity to do so. So I want the visitors, whether by bicycle or walking by car, when they are going to the building, they'll see the western side of the building, and then they'll park the car a bit further away from the building. They get out from a car or bicycle and walk to the building. This will prepare them psychologically before they enter the building. So to me, this was important to me. And the second thing was, how am I going to organize all the activities in the building? It was for a photography retreat for about 10,000 square feet. About 15 students will be in the school for about a week. Every week, a new batch of students will be there. And then there'll be 5 lecturers. They'll be there for about 3 months each. So, and then you have a dormitory, you have a lecturer quarters, and you have a studio, you have an exhibition, you have a canteen. How am I going to organize it? I decided to organize the space in the linear form. I call it linear organization. And I introduced a wall, curvilinear, as a spine to organize all the activities together. And along this so-called spine or the organization principle, I have the reception, I have the dormitory, I have a studio, I have a teacher quarters. And along the way, I also introduce certain spaces. Some are private, some are public, some are semi-private, and so on. And then, as you can see, I also, this wall is like, it's a bit curvilinear. It's something more like something that's more organic. And I have something that's more formal to contrast. And along this wall, I create a lot of openings. So from sunrise to sunset, the wall will cast shadows. In the photography school, in the study of photography, the two most important elements are light and shadow. And at the same time, I want to create some kind of sculptural building in response to this vast landscape, 100 acres. It cannot be, for a building in the 100 acres urban suburb site, it cannot be like a building in the urban site. So the building had to express a sense of freedom, like it belongs to this 100 acres and so on. So this is the first two principles I learned about my design later on, about how I can use a so-called the linear organization to organize all my activities, how I can use something that's formal to contrast with something more organic, how visitors can approach the building. The second project, also in the third year, is the second semester, was we are asked to design a railway station in a small town, in addition to an existing railway station. The existing station was a historical building designed by H.S. Richardson. And for most architects, when they are confronted to design an addition to a historical building, normally they'll try to design the addition, the new building looks sympathetic or more like the historical building. To me, as an architect or any building professional, we have to read beyond the surface. We have to understand, to show respect to the existing building, we have to understand the characteristic of the existing building. In this instance, the building is a classical building. Symmetrical building have a central axis. So I established an axis across the building. By doing so, the new building, while respecting the central axis of the existing building, can be more organic and more responsive to the environment, to the site. In this case, the new building has to be built on the river bank. And I also extend the axis all the way across the river. As the commuters, some of them will become from the city center, some will become from the suburb, and they have to take a cable car across the river to the new railway station, the station. So in this assignment, I learned about axis, about symmetrical, again about formality and organic, and about the approach of the buildings from the urban setting, from the suburb setting, and so on, the contrast between formality and organic. During my last 3 years in the architecture school in Houston, I worked part-time for 2 established firms. So it was very easy for me to find a job a few months before my graduation. In fact, 3 months before my graduation, I went to New York for 10 job interviews. I received 10 job offers on spot. And I decided to join the Helio Group, one of the most famous firms in USA. And I was there for 5 years. One of the most important building I participated in was New Jersey Aquarium. And the site was very interesting. It was almost similar from the site of my school project. The building is in New Jersey. We call New Jersey the Garden State of New Jersey. And we also call New Jersey, it's in Camden, New Jersey. And it's across, the site is across the river from Philadelphia. And then to be exact, from the Penn's Landing, from the Independence Hall from Philadelphia. So how am I going to approach the design of the building in terms of urban scale, in terms of urban design? As visitors, some of the visitors will travel from New Jersey, some will take a water taxi across the river from Philadelphia. So there are 2 approaches. And how am I going to address a building in terms of the urban form for the visitors from Philadelphia from far away, and then for the visitors from New Jersey from close up. And there's also an important axis in the form of the Federal Street in Camden, New Jersey, as a street is on the same axis as Penn's Landing in Philadelphia. To address the visitors and the people from across the river, we decided that the building should have 2 frontage. The frontage facing Philadelphia and across the river should be more formal, so it's more recognizable from a distance. And the front facing New Jersey should be more fragmented. It's like a garden, like a village, should be more fragmented. And we also introduced the axis along the Federal Street to be terminated to the Penn Standing across, and along the way we have a terminal on the Camden side for the water taxi. And so now we have something I call about formal, in contrast to something more organic or informal. And how am I going to organize the activities in the aquarium? The purpose of the New Jersey Aquarium is to showcase the exhibits, is to showcase the aquatic life in New Jersey shore. We decided to organize the exhibits in a more linear way. As I call it linear organization. A visitor, when we come to the building, after you buy the ticket, you will go through the outdoor exhibition, garden exhibition, and so on. And then in the middle exhibition is the most exciting exhibition, a 1 million gallons shark tank, and then slowly you'll go through other exhibition. And the final stop will be the auditorium, where you are going to watch some kind of video to summarize your visit to the aquarium. And then you can go to the bookstore to buy some souvenir, and to the restaurant to have your lunch, and then you can take a staircase to go down to the riverfront boulevard to enjoy the beautiful view of the city of Philadelphia. So the building has a story to tell. This is the front of the building facing Philadelphia. The front of the building facing New Jersey. Section that I drew a long time ago. There was no computer, all are manually drawn. And on the left-hand side, there are 2 photographs. On the bottom is the architecture model of the building, the aquarium. On the top is the photograph of the actual building. It looks exactly the same. And some of the photographs of the aquarium. I last visited the aquarium in I think 1992. And I know that my ex-boss, Dato Ellen Tong, is going to attend this webinar. So I decided to add in 3 extra slides last minute. I came back to Malaysia in 1991. My first boss and employer was Dato Ellen Tong. I'm sure all you know him. He's a legend in Malaysian property industry. And my first assignment was to design Monkera Palma. It was a phase 2 in the Monkera development. In Monkera phase 1, we call it Monkera Pines. They have 3 blocks, 10 acres, 500 units of building. Monkera Palma, 8 acres, 400 units. I was asked to use the same apartment units layout from Monkera Pines, as it was going to be built with a system formwork. The only thing for the apartment was as far as the outlook is concerned, I can only change the facade and the roof. And then, but at the same time, I know we are going to have parking garages, multi-story parking garage, and we are going to have 4 tennis courts, 2 swimming pools, tennis courts, and so on. So how can I use all facilities to organize my development in a more interesting way as far as urban design is concerned? So I decided to use all facilities to arrange them in an L shape. It's almost like a castle. Along this L shape, I have a parking garages. I have 4 tennis courts. I have swimming pool. We have a so-called badminton court, a multi-purpose hall, anchor the corner, and then above the guardhouse are the squash courts. And how am I going to locate, to place the so-called the majestic tower? And I establish an axis at the middle of the so-called parking garage tennis court. Along this axis, I have the so-called the sitting area for the tennis court and the entrance to the parking garage and so on. And then we have 2 swimming pools. One swimming pool is above the parking garage. Is a bit more formal. I decided to have a second swimming pool in a more organic, in a more informal way. And since we need to have a detention pond, we decided to have an artificial lake. And then we created an island at the artificial lake. And in the island, we have a swimming pool and a restaurant. And there is a short bridge, pedestrian bridge, for you to walk across to the swimming pool. If you feel like, I mean, we created some kind of psychological circulation for you to go to the swimming pool in an island like you're going to the resort. And we also have an amphitheater near the artificial lake. And then that's how I located the Royal Tower. It exists together with along the in axis with the amphitheater. This is Mongkia Palma. I used to own a unit on the 15th floor. 15th floor. I was hoping that I wanted to buy floor number 8 or 18th floor, but they are more expensive. Malaysian love number 8 numbers and so on. So I ended up on a unit on the 15th floor. And then, so I have to go back to this one again, sorry. And my second project I designed while I worked for Dato' Tong was a shopwrecks in front of the Mongkia Pine. It's a small shopwrecks. And I introduced a half circle to make it, and then to have something like something that's more formal on one side facing Mongkia Pine and something more organic facing the busy traffic surrounding the site. This is a Mongkia shopwrecks. And then in December 1993, 2 weeks after I joined BEP Architect, I was asked by one of the directors, Mr. Ho Wai Peng. He called me into his office, and then he said here's one good news and one bad news to tell me. The good news was BEP Architect at the very last minute was invited to submit a design proposal for Putrajaya, the new capital city of Malaysia. And it was an honor and super important job for the company. The bad news is I've been appointed to design, and I only have 2 weeks to do so. It was 4 p.m. And then he gave me a topography map. And on the same night at about 10 p.m., I went back to the office, went to one of the small conference rooms to think what should I do about the project since I only had 2 weeks to do so. As I did not have time to go to visit the 11,000 acre sites in Padang Besar. And I look at the topography map, try to get some inspiration, some clue on how the so-called our new capital city should be. And in my mind, the two things came across in my mind. As a capital city, you need certain formality, like Washington DC, like the National Mall in Washington DC. You need certain monument, certain formality. At the same time, it is going to be a living city. Hundreds of thousands of people are going to live there. You need certain organic element. So that people who's going to live there is going to call home, will enjoy it. So in the topography map, I discovered 2 geopolitical high points. Instantly, I created an axis, which eventually it became the so-called spines of Putrajaya. And then once I have the axis, I have something more formal. What should be the organic elements of the city? And I look around the topography map for the inspiration again, and I found there are 2 rivers nearby, Sungai Langat and Sungai Chua. and there are some low valley and river streams in Putrajaya or in Parambasak. And then I look around for a topography of a contour point of 22 meters, and I decided that I should fill up this area with water. And thus we created a so-called a semi-artificial lake. So this was the initial concept of Putrajaya, and it was created in 10 minutes. And I asked the perspective artist with BB Architect Research to come in to help me to produce some drawings together with a few of my former colleagues from BEP. In my mind, Putrajaya has to be a garden city. And I live in Princeton, New Jersey for 5 years. To me, Princeton is a garden city. When you're in the garden city, you do not have to go to the garden anymore. The city is a garden. And in the garden city, the garden, the environment, the landscape should be more prominent than the building or the infrastructure. That's what I have in mind. And along the spine, we have certain government building. As I know, this is going to be a government, we have to have certain formality. But at the same time, I do not want the so-called central axis to be too powerful. There's a reason in this early concept, we have a core island. There's no continuous boulevard like what we have today, because we want it to be very important, very monumental, but at the same time, I do not want the Prime Minister, where his office will be located on the top of the axis, to think he's a king. And we also want the residents in Putrajaya, beside normal public transport system, that they can use water taxi to go to work, to go for shopping and so on. And also in my initial idea, all the buildings in Putrajaya should be a very simple, down-to-earth building. It's almost like the building designed by Jeffrey Bauer for the government facilities in Sri Lanka. In my imagination or in my mind, Malaysia is a democratic country. The building should be very down to earth, very humble. So people like my mother, a farmer, would feel comfortable to walk in to the government building. We won the competition. Our concept was selected by the former Prime Minister, Dr. Mahathir. And then we are asked to form, government asked all the consultants, a few major consultants in Malaysia, together with the JKR and Town and Country Department, to form a consortium to develop the design of Putrajaya. I was appointed as a Deputy General Manager and the so-called Chief Designer on the project. And in Putrajaya, along the spine, beside all the government building, we also designed or advocated the infrastructure tunnel below it. And with the exception of the Prime Minister building, which we think should be more monumental, more prominent, in our initial idea, we think all the buildings in Putrajaya in the government precinct should be very simple, almost like the shop houses in Malaysia. 2-3-story building, all with a so-called walkway, all connected by the veranda, all connected, and so on. And at the ground floor of the building or the shop houses, we should have the so-called restaurants and cafe. Publics can go there, have coffee, have breakfast, and the minister would work on the second floor and upper floors, and all the senior government servants and the ministers would come down and mingle with everybody like a family. That's the idea I have, the democratic idea I have about Putrajaya. And also involved in the Putrajaya memorial. a few years later. This is what we have. This is what Putrajaya is now. I'm very happy about the overall environment, the lake and so on. But I do not involve in any of the building in Putrajaya. I was just a master planner. The Prime Minister's office and the first mosque in the Putrajaya, Dataran Putrajaya. The 4.2 kilometer boulevard. Again, the 4.2 kilometer boulevard. The view from the Putrajaya Convention Center. The water quality in Putrajaya Lake is very good. The Grand Mosque of Putrajaya, to me, one of the nicest buildings in Malaysia. And this was a picture taken maybe 15 years ago. We have a family trip there. My children, my wife, and my Indonesian maid. I mean, her name is Sri, so we have to call her Puan Sri. She came to work with us when my younger son Andrew was born. So she was with us for 14 years until Andrew and my family came to Seattle. Now she's in Kalimantan Tengah. She is now involved in some kind of home recycling business. And I know for a fact that my children love her more than they love me. Even until now, they still send her money from time to time. And after Putrajaya, I joined KL Linear City and KL Borneo to involve in the Kuala Lumpur Linear City project. The idea was to build a linear city on the 12-kilometer long Kring River reserve, and certain portion of the project will be above the river. And the concept is to make the entire development as a spine for the city of Kuala Lumpur. The project was divided in a few parcels. In certain parcels, we have and it will be served by, I think, about 8 monorail stations. The longest parcel and the most expensive parcel is called Gigaworld. It was located along Jalan Putra above the Kring River, 2.4 kilometers long. It was to be the longest building and probably one of the most expensive building in the world. And it was to be built above the Kring River. We were not allowed to put a column inside the river due to the hydraulic reason. And we engaged Sir Anthony Hunt, one of the most talented structural engineer in the world from England, to help us to come out with a structural solution on how to span across the 45-meter river. His solution was a transfer. Transfer is something like, example, you have a monsoon rain, you have a table, you put a table above the small monsoon rain, and then you put a book above it. So this is what we call transfer. Yeah. There were many projects along the linear city. And another one which I was quite excited was, we call Parcel A. Parcel A was, we want to use Parcel A to connect Kampong Baru with the Golden Triangle of Kuala Lumpur by building developments above the Kring River, and also to introduce certain urban plaza on the Kampong Baru site. And all projects did not take off due to the financial crisis in 1998, even though all of them already have a building permit approval. In KL Linear City, in the entire project, besides the property development, We also have the so-called KL monorail and the New Pantai Highway. New Pantai Highway was completed. Phase 1 KL monorail with 11 stations were completed. And in the year 2000, I joined forces with my brother to form Kun Lim Architect. And my earlier projects were all outside Malaysia. And then in June 2000, Tetek Wing, Vice President of FIABCI, introduced me to Tan Sri Lim Kim Hong for my first project. Yeah. So the project was to build an addition. And to do some to build an addition to Tan Sri Lim's office. And he also asked me to convert a basement into office space as well. The biggest challenge was he wanted the project to be completed very fast, like yesterday, and he has a very tight budget. And he has a very tight budget of 600,000 ringgit, which is about 150,000 US dollars. And he wants a project to and one of the requirements was when the visitors, ministers or prime minister came to visit him, they'll say, wow. So I immediately came out with a solution. First, on the ground floor, I removed the staircase facing the reception area and moved the staircase to this location. And then I use this staircase as sort of like area to bring in natural light and to connect to the basement, the sub-basement, where the new office is going to, and also to connect to the upper floors where Tan Sri Lim's office is going to. And for Tan Sri Lim's own office, I decided to build a new structure on the existing roof in the shape of the figure 8. I sketched up the concept for him. As Malaysian, especially Malaysian Chinese, love number 8, so he approved immediately. So this is a new office with the new staircase on the ground floor, connected to the sub-basement. And this is Tan Sri Lim's room. It's a very small room, but it looks very big because I use a curvilinear for his room. When you introduce curvilinear in a room or in a space, you are creating a multiple point perspective, and you make your space appears much bigger than it is. A view of the Petronas Twin Towers from his office. Yeah. And this photograph show the contrast between the existing building, which is something that's very solid, very formal, on the new addition, which is more transparent and more organic. Another project, it was a house for a good friend of my brother in Country Heights, Damansara. Normally, I sketch out the drawings myself initially. I call it a modern interpretation of kampong house. The nicest view are facing west, which happen to be facing the hot sunset, hot suns and so on. So, and we decided to make the ground floor very open to encourage cross ventilation. And we also introduce a second layer, a space of so-called transitional space or second layer of skin, such as terraces and so on, and second layer skin to protect the inhabitants from the harsh tropical sun. Swimming pool on the ground floor encourage cool air to cool out the slab above and also encourage cross ventilation. We preserve the slope, so the house is in certain areas 2 stories, certain areas 3 stories. Entrance with a fish pond, with a grass and a grass bridge. And in the so-called the second floor, we have a dining room and living room on the second floor, but separated by the entrance foyer. And I also introduce certain vertical elements section, so to have a so-called visual connection between the lower floor and upper floors. And besides, this is a so-called modern interpretation of the kampong house, of Malaysian village house. This is also a 3-generation house. The owner and his 2 sons and their families also live together with them. So I introduced this so-called vertical connection, so that the grandmother can call the grandchildren to come down to have dinner together with them. A lot of so-called clear story to introduce indirect natural light, cross natural ventilation, or the wind tunnel effects to cool down the building both inside and outside. I think this house won the Trends magazine the award for the so-called best house in Malaysia, the so-called 20 years award for the best house design or built in Malaysia many years ago. And the second house I designed was for a house in Seremban. After I visited the site, 1 acre site, I met the owner for a second time in Seremban at Dairy Funds. As usual, after they give me a check, my down payment, and then they ask me, what do you have in mind for my house? I sketch up the concept instantly. My usual 10-minute sketch. I say in his, I told him in the 1 acre site, the site had 2 levels, and front higher and the back is lower. So it has to be in 2 portions, you have to step down. Secondly, behind the site is a forest reserve. So I told them, I want the visitor, the moment they come to the compound, they will have a beautiful view of the forest and so on. So I created an axis, a vista. So when the visitor come in, the first thing they will see is the landscape and the environment and the tree. I created a vista. And along the vista, I proposed to have a so-called a pavilion on the fish pond. And on the right-hand side of the axis, we have a living room and kitchen and guest room and the so-called games recreation room and so on. On the left-hand side, we have a 2-story quarters. On the ground floor is a home office. On the upper floor is a guest office, and they'll be connected by a bridge. And the owner told me after I showed him my 10-minute sketch, he said he never asked me to. In his design bridge, there was not a requirement for a swimming pool, but I told him you'll be nice and a so-called a fish pond and so on, and he agreed. And then after I went back to my office, I sketched up a nicer sketch for my colleagues or my architect to continue to develop. the design, the eventual building was designed and built almost exactly like my 10-minute sketch. The only requirement, the owner gave me the almost 100% freedom to design. The only requirement he gave me was he was given 8 pieces of 22 feet columns, timber columns, and he stored them at a warehouse in Sabah. He wanted to use it. So that's how the height of the house was decided. This is a bridge connecting the guest room, guest quarters, and the main house. And again, the living room, I introduced the so-called curvilinear, so-called geometry to make the living room much bigger than what it appears. Whenever there's a windows, it's always full height with the sliding windows, a sliding door, and so on, to help to make it indoor when it's fully open up, feel like you're outdoor. Home office and the guest room. And from the year 2003 to the year 2010, we are the architects for at least Toyota projects throughout Malaysia, from their 3S center to their spare park center to their car distribution center. And most of the Toyota projects are shown the 3S center, like they are more like rectangular shape and rectangular shape or always squarish. We managed to convince Toyota, UMW Toyota, for us to come out a new proposal. This one is a Toyota 3S center in section 19, Petaling Jaya. We also propose to have something that's a bit more organic, more curvilinear, more I think to me it's like more gentle, softer, and so on in our Toyota showroom. And we also designed the Lexus 3S center, I think in near the curve in Pigeon. From the year 2001 to 2014, I participated in at least 10 projects in China, from township, master planning to architecture to shopping mall and so on. And my clients are from Singapore, Hong Kong, China, and Malaysia, including Genting Group. They engaged me to produce a proposal for the Shanghai Cruise City many years ago. What I show you the slide I'm showing you now is a linear event city in Hurudao in Shandong, I think in Shenyang, in Liaoning province. We are hired by a Singaporean developer to produce a master plan. The idea is to organize all the urban activities along the existing river. And at a certain portion of the river nearer to the ocean, I also created a second river and to form an island to have the most important so-called development in the island. This is another project in China. It is in an area called Xiaojing, outside, not far from Shenyang, not far from Shenzhen. My client was a public listed company in Shenzhen. We visited the site, quite interesting site. After we visited the site and before the dinner, and in China, a long time ago, normally the client will ask you to drink wine and liquor and so on during the dinner. They were heavy drinker. So I told my clients, please give me 10 minutes. Let me sketch up some concept before our dinner. So I quickly sketch up the concept of how to develop this project and so on. And then he approved my concept immediately. And I sketch up the second concept the next day after I became sober. And the idea was to create as many so-called different types of diamond for the purpose of marketing as possible. I decided to bring in the water feature to it for the diamonds, so that we can have certain villas, waterside villa, waterfront apartment, and so on. So this is a perspective of the township. And I think in December after Christmas in December 2008, I was invited by a consortium consisting of the current owners of Skyworld and a few politicians from MCA, former ministers, to help them to develop a proposal in Shenyang, China. And they call it Shenyang Islamic City. We visited the site in the town center of Shenyang. Most of the residents in the area are Muslim. And then within the site, there are a few interesting structures. One of them is a mosque, a historical mosque. And they do not know what to do about it. It was a bidding exercise. The consortium, they asked me to produce a proposal to submit a bid in the competition against bidders from Hong Kong and Indonesia and Singapore and so on. Immediately after I visited the site in the hotel, I came out the concept. My idea was, initially I wanted to preserve the existing mosque, not just to preserve the existing mosque. I wanted to make the mosque as a focus point of the entire development by introduce pedestrian mall surrounding it, and also by introduce a plaza in front of the mosque, and as well as a bazaar for the Muslims along the axis. We produce a concept, the drawings, and we also produce the animation and voiceover, all within a month. And then we presented the proposal to the governor of Shenyang, Liaoning province in Singapore. And my client won the bid. Unfortunately, the project did not kick off due to the financial issue. And from 2005 to until now, I involved in a lot of projects in Indonesia for companies such as Lipo Group, Sinarmas Group, and FKS Land in Sulawesi and Java. This is a master plan of Lipo Cikarang. Lipo Cikarang is an industry township near Jakarta. It was an industry township, and what you see in the color portion are the portion that I was asked to redesign or reimagining for the city of Lipo Cikarang to make it more exciting. And what I'm going to show you are two projects that I designed and eventually implemented. First, we call it Lippo Cikarang Junction. I was asked to design a so-called a temporary shopping mall for the developments, plus some hotel and condominium and internet school and so on. Phase one was to be a street mall, a temporary structure. I get the inspiration from the site. There were a lot of existing trees on the site. The tree that color darker green. So basically, the existing trees on the site form my concept. And like example, in this courtyard, why there is a courtyard there, because there are existing trees. And I also introduce a rotunda as a focus point, as a main entrance point to attract people to go to the street mall. It was completed more than 10 years ago. And the second another project I'm going to show you was like, we call it City Center at Lippo Cikarang. My main idea was to introduce a linear lake as a spine to organize all the buildings, all the development along in the city center. Since there are like some river stream or low area on the site, and it's not just a linear lake to organize all the buildings, all the entire township together. It also will serve as a detention pond and so on for the developments. After I came up with a concept, along the way, Lippo Group engaged HOK from USA to remaster the township. They still maintain my initial concept, but they increase the density. And then subsequently, a developer from Wuhan, China, joined them, and they changed the name to Meikata. Meikata, May is the owner of Lippo Group is James Berry. His mother's name is called, May is his mother. The name, his mom's name called May, so they call Meikata. And then after that, they decided to increase the density further, and they engaged Japanese consult architects and engineers, Mitsubishi, Jiso, to come in to remaster the entire township again. That's what the township looked like. And but they built, luckily, fortunately, they built the lake as according to my idea, which I'm extremely grateful, very happy. And as I mentioned to you, the developer from Wuhan came in as a JV partner to build the township. And something happened. They withdrew from the project. They went back to Wuhan. And I was asked to visit the township in December 2019. And I was hired to remaster plan the township again, try to go back to my initial idea. And I call it reimagining of the uptown Lippo Cikarang. And unfortunately, the project, I should say, my assignment was suspended in February or March last year when Wuhan come back to Indonesia again. I'm being sarcastic, but I like China. I'm just saying Wuhan come back again when the pandemic started last year in March. So my assignment was suspended. And I also involved in a lot of projects in India. I work with my associate in Bangalore. The first one, we are invited, or we were engaged by GMR Group to help them to submit a bid for a new technology township in Hosur. Hosur is located in Tamil Nadu, and not south and south of Bangalore. It is a very complicated site. The site is divided into two portions, north and south. At the same time, there is an existing railway cut the site into become like 4 parts. So my associate in Bangalore and our clients, they did not know how to solve the problem. To me, when there's a crisis, there's an opportunity. Just like the Chinese word, crisis in Chinese we call 危机. Wei is crisis, 机会. When there's a crisis, there's opportunity. And I look at it. I visit the site. I look at it. This the railway route bisect the site into 4 parts. But we need a green buffer along the railway route. So, and I decided to enhance the buffer and to make it as a linear spine to organize the whole township together. In this linear spine, besides we are going to have a linear park, we are also going to have all the underground infrastructure, such as water piping, electric piping, and fiber optics along the linear park or along the spine. And from there, from the spine, they can distribute it equally to the rest of the township. So those are what my initial concept. Yeah. We won the bid for GMR, but unfortunately, the project again did not materialize due to the land acquisition issue in India. And the second project I worked on in India was for a campus for US technology in Trivandrum. And my concept was to, again, use a spine to organize the campus together. In the campus, in the design brief, we have a three grouping of building. The first one was to be a corporate campus for the top executives and chairmen and so on. Second, for the young engineers. Third are the residences for the worker. So I use a spine to connect everything together. And along the spine, you have a guardhouse, you have a cafe on the water, you have a gymnasium and so on. We have for the phase 1 building, which is a so-called executive office blocks complex. The focus point is a big plaza in the middle. And just like all our buildings are designed for so-called for the sustainable design, for the green, for so-called design for the green LEED or green building index, so on. And in 2005, my brother, this is my brother. He's one of the top doctors in Taiwan. He used to be a top executive for some of the biggest hospitals in Taiwan, such as Changkang Memorial Hospital. He was also a professor in medical school in Taiwan. In 2005, he joined Shiji Group. Shiji is the biggest so-called charity organization in the Chinese world. And it was founded and started by Master Chen Yan. So my brother, asked me, I would say he instructed me to go to Taiwan to meet up with Master Chen Yan to see what I can help out, what I can work with the sushi. So sushi involved in projects all over. They own 6 hospitals in Taiwan with about 4,000 beds total. They own university, colleges, and so on. They also built mosques, schools in places such as Iran, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and so on. In fact, the biggest Islamic school in Jakarta is designed, built, and funded by Sushi Foundation. And my first project for Sushi was in San Dimas, California. I went there in October 2005 to visit the site, and my job was to remaster the entire township, entire campus for the Sushi headquarters in California. And my second project for Sushi was a Sushi campus in Kepong, Kuala Lumpur. Before I designed, I read a lot of books about Sushi and Master Chen Yan. Master Chen Yan believed that a building is a teacher in silence. A building can influence a person, can influence the inhabitants, the people, the user of the building. In most of the Sushi campus, the purpose of the building are used for educational purposes. You'll be like students from young kids to adults to go there to learn about the mission of Sushi and so on. So she wants the building to be very simple, very calm. And it also had to be a good neighbor building. So immediately my concept was to have a U-shaped building, like the building is hugging you, like in Chinese, in Sushi philosophy, we call it 拥抱苍生, like you hug the earth, you hug the world. It's hugging you. The building asks you to come in. And I divided the building into three components. In which I have a so-called two in-between space, in between building, a two-way transparency building to encourage cross ventilation and so on. The building is designed and built to meet the GBI, the Malaysia GBI goal standard, Green Building Index standards. All the course of design, I met Master Chen Yan many times, maybe 15 times in Taiwan. The project was completed maybe about 7 years ago. Yeah. And this is a UCSI University main campus in Negeri Sembilan. I did a master plan, and we are also asked to design the hospital and the medical school. My concept was to use a open linear courtyard to organize a hospital. And then for the medical school, ground floor is very open to encourage cross ventilation. We also introduced a series of sky garden and so on. Phase 1 was completed a few years ago. And this one is a project for Dato' Neo Suket of Trinity Group. It was a very fast project. He made decision very fast. 3.7 acres to accommodate 700+ units of apartment and retail components. The most interesting part about this project is a recreational floor. We decided not to follow the car park grid to have our swimming pool, and we placed our 50-meter swimming pool on the 45 degree against the car park grid. And we also have a so-called gymnasium, almost like a bridge, span across the swimming pool. And this is supposed to be a so-called a museum or exhibition center for furniture in Setapak. I designed for Skyward. It was a very interesting project, but unfortunately, it was not built. My mother, I want to talk a bit about my mother. I was away from Malaysia for about 9 years, for 10 years. For the first 9 years, I did not see my mom at all. And then 9 years after I left Malaysia, my mom and my sister came to Queensland to visit me. And a year later, I decided to come back to Malaysia. And my father passed away when I was 3 years old. My mom, by herself, managed to raise 9 of us to become architects, engineers, and doctors. So I decided to come back to be with my mother. And I was with her for my mother. I was together with her for her last 20 years of her life. And I was like thankful for that. And after she passed away, I know I don't have to be in Malaysia anymore. So, and I know that I have to give an option to my children, just like the kind of alternative and options my mom gave us brothers and sisters. So I moved to Seattle, a very beautiful city. And what I'm going to show you after this was the project I involved in after I moved to Seattle in 2013. And I formed a company called Kun Lim Studio LLC. The first project I secured, almost like the moment a company was set up, it was in May 2013, I still carried the cell phone from Malaysia, the handphone from Malaysia. I received a phone call by a guy by the name of Mr. Yi. He was from Los Angeles, but he lived in Chongqing. He called me, and that was my first project. He hired me to design shopping center in Chongqing, China. So, a few minutes after I set up my company, that was my first project for my company, my new firm in Seattle. And then initially, I involved in a few small jobs in Seattle. And one of them is a mosque. I was asked to design a mosque in the suburb of Sammamish, a 32,000 square foot mosque. Those are some of my sketches and so on. The design was completed, and we also received a permit to start construction. But the mosque committee does not have enough budget to build it. The construction cost in Seattle is very expensive. A building like this mosque will cost about $400 per square feet, which is almost like 8 times higher than the construction cost in Malaysia. Due to the labor cost in Seattle, it's very expensive. Just for comparison, just for your information, in the construction site, you have a guy, the so-called safety officer who conduct traffic. You conduct traffic, you take out a signboard and so on, which is a very easy job. And in Seattle, a person like a guy who conduct traffic, his salary is about maybe $5,000 to $6,000 per month. And the job did not kick off, but the imam of the mosque hired me to design his restaurant in Seattle. This is my project that I designed a few years ago near KLCC. And the sports complex in Setapak completed last year. My first sketch. And we came out a lot of initial ideas, different options and so on. have to go through very fast. I think I'm running out of time. The project is completed, fully completed, but this photograph was taken in December 2019 when I last visited the building. And I work on a lot of projects for Dato Michael Teo of PKT. This was my first project with him. We call it. It was this project is it's called One Logistic Hub along the Kesas Highway in Sharam. We have 3 buildings. One we call the ship. That is our first corporate headquarters. And the second one is a warehouse we call the Wave. And then the tallest building we call the Lighthouse. The Lighthouse is a vertical warehouse, office, and the campus for the Peninsula College, also owned by PKT Group. And the second project for Michael Teo is a One Auto Hub in Batu Kawan, Penang, consisting of the warehouse, the university, and commercial development. First project completed is a Jewel Wave, the largest warehouse in Malaysia. I think won the FIABCI award in 2019. And the warehouse also has the longest Japanese garden in Malaysia. It was certified by Malaysia Books of Records. Coincidentally, I mean, the Malaysia Book of Records is also owned by Dato Michael Teo. I mean, he's my good friend, so I hope it's okay I said it. But anyway, it's the longest Japanese garden in Malaysia. And in the next project, the second project completed at the One Auto Hub is the ship campus. It is the ship campus is consisting of a 9-story academic building for 4,000 students and the students' residences for 1,500 persons. And the academic block is designed for GBI Go with a series of sky gardens, sky terraces, and so on. And also we have skylights to bring in the natural light to the campus. It is also designed like almost like a convention center. It has 2 auditoriums. One has 550% capacity. Second one has 200 plus capacity. I hope I can give an in-person lecture in this auditorium maybe a few months from now when the pandemic is under control. And it also has a so-called a floor for all the shops, cafe, and so on. Gymnasium. And now we are working on another job for PKT Group. It is called One Northern Hub, and it's consisting of 4 components. The first component has a college, mystery outlets, office, and a hotel. And second component is a petrol station, and then third component is a warehouse and custom office, and the last component is a container yard. Construction is going to start in the second half of this year. And in December 2019, I visited 2 project sites in Kuching, and I started working on 2 of them. First one is a Kuching waterfront city along the so-called Sarawak River. I visited the site, beautiful site. Immediately, I decided that I should have vista from the ICOM Square, the ICOM Square or ICOM Plaza. My sketch. Concept is the so-called urban design is completed. The project is suspended at the moment due to the COVID-19. And then second half of last year, I worked on 2 new projects in Sri Lanka. I never been to the site. In fact, I haven't been to the Sri Lanka. I also never meet with my clients. My clients at the moment is in Los Angeles. He has a PhD in philosophy from UCLA. I haven't met him yet. And I hope I am going to meet him soon in Sri Lanka. Both of us are waiting for our vaccine, and then hope after we get our vaccine, hopefully we can travel to Sri Lanka. The first one I'm going to show you was to design a dormitory for students for his college. It's a small project. I immediately decided to keep the tree. There's a big tree on the side, and to make a tree as a focus point of the development of the project. There will not be air condition in the building, in the dormitory. It's going to be 100% with natural air condition, natural ventilation, and so on. This is a dormitory for the postgraduate students for the college of the study of Buddhism. And I was asked to design something that's very simple, very minimal to be comparable to the principle and belief of Buddhism: simplicity, less is more. And I also designed a new education and media center for the College of Buddhism for the same owner. Immediately I sketched out the concept, and then I decided that the building should have an atrium with natural ventilation. The atrium should be an orientation space for visitors to come in. They'll know where they are and so on. And the atrium getting bigger, the building getting bigger when I received the design requirement, and it's going to be it's going to have a gross built-up area of about 110,000 square feet. And I introduced a lotus pond in front of the building. Lotus is a very important. Lotus branch is a very important so-called element in Buddhism. Lotus is a kind of branch that will remain green even they are like in the middle of muddy water. So it's something like, if you are a politician in Malaysia, if I say you are a lotus, it's like a compliment. I mean, in Malaysia, you are surrounded by sort of sorry. How to go? This is the section. The section is all the atrium is going to be all fully naturally ventilated. Summer perspective. I'm going to show you my last project. It's going to be a 2-minute animation that we produced recently. This is a so-called global distribution center for Daiso, Japan. It is going to be the biggest logistics center in Southeast Asia, with a built-up area of more than 3 million square feet. The design might be changed completely. This is how we are still at a very early conceptual design stage. What I want to highlight about this project is it's going to be designed, at least for me, designed to meet the requirement for GBI platinum in Malaysia. Green building index platinum is going to be like, we're going to use natural ventilation, natural light, and so on, rainwater housing. The footprint of the building is about 1 million square feet, means that we are going to have 1 million square feet of roof. I propose to cover the entire roof with a solar panel. If it is built according to my proposal, this is going to be the biggest solar farm in Malaysia. So the title of the music I use in the animation in Japanese is called Bushido. In Mandarin, we call Wu Si Dao. In English, it's called a Whale Samurai. And the composer is not Japanese, he's a Norwegian by the name of Peter Roy. Just like, this is the end of my presentation, just like samurai. The Whale Samurai, in the mid of the worst crisis in the world, we should march on. Maybe we should look at it as an opportunity for all of us to create something better for our next generation. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for the attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kun Lim. On behalf of everybody here, because they are all muted, I thanks on behalf of everybody. I'm the only one of the very few who can have a free hand to clap. Thank you very much. Very informative, very personal experience sharing. Thank you very much. I would also like to, we are 10, the time now is 10:34. We are 4 minutes above the time allocated. There are a few questions, and I will only I will just ask one question, so that Kun Lim can answer. For the rest, right? Maybe you might want to approach him directly, or we can pass him the questions for him to answer. I think I choose this because this question has been asked more than once. It says, right, what has been the most challenging project in your career, and why do you say so?
I I was I think I would say all my projects are very challenging. The most challenging to my career probably not in terms of how the difficulty the project is. I would say the most challenging project in my career was Putrajaya.
Wow.
Putrajaya was very challenging in a sense that the initial concept was very easy because I worked alone in a small team with a few of my colleagues from DEP. But once we won a competition, we are asked to form a consortium with people from all over Malaysia, from all the big firm, government agencies, and so on. So it was very challenging. It was very challenging that you had to deal with a lot of people. You had to have a agreement, compromises with everybody, and need to learn how to convince other to accept your ideas, or you to learn how to accept other people's ideas. So those are the most challenging. Putrajaya to me is the most challenging project. I remember for the 2 years plus period, I worked out of the office in the so-called Wisma Persekutuan. Government gave us an office in Wisma Persekutuan. Basically, I stayed there for two years. I worked 100 plus hours a week with my colleagues and so on. So to me, it was the most challenging project to me. But I appreciate the opportunity that project given to me. And then just like anything, just like in our building industry and in any kind of business and corporation and so on, the most challenging thing is always about team building, about communication, about how you deal with other people and so on. So in this case, Putrajaya was my most challenging project.
Thank you, Kun Lim. And Putrajaya is our project closest to our heart.
Yeah.
I saw Dato' Alan Tong face appeared. I think he's muted. I'm not sure whether he want to say something. Dato' Alan, do you want to say something? If you want to say something, maybe you lift up your hand, then I will know. Otherwise, I assume that you want to say hello to everybody only. Okay, you want to say something? Yeah, I think Secretary, can you unmute Dato' Alan Tong as an exception? We can't hear you. Wait, I need to Secretary, can you unmute her because I can't unmute Dato' Alan Tong here.
Dato, now we can hear you.
Now I got it.
Okay. Dato, can you repeat? Dato' Alan Tong, can you repeat your question because you were muted just now? We can only see the movement of your lips, but we are not able to interpret the language. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I just want to say, very interesting webinar by Kun Lim. And just to tell him that the Monkera Palma that he spent so much time on, that the trees and palm trees have gone tall, and it has won many few years of the best what we call evergreen in condominium. So thanks to you, Kun Lim, you should go and have a look again what you did for Monkera Palma. All the best, Kun Lim, and everybody else. Yeah, you were very interesting. Thank you.
Actually, I learned a lot. I learned a lot of things from Dato' Alan Tong. I can give a lecture about what I learned. 1 hour lecture what I learned from Dato' Alan Tong.
We also learned a lot from Dato' Alan Tong, who was our world past president. Thanks again, Kun Lim. Unfortunately, due to the time constraint, we are not able to allow more questions.
Yeah.
And any good things must come to an end so that we can start another good chapter. Yeah. And I would like to thanks again from FIABCI all over the world who has joined us from US, from Philippines, from Malaysia, from Canada, from Hong Kong. Yeah. If I could acknowledge some of them, my apologies if I can't acknowledge every one of you. Those who have registered earlier and who are present here, Daniel, the world past president, Daniel Gross and Pecher. I hope I got his name correct. Dato Alan Tong, of course, Tan Sri Dato CK Teo, FIABCI Malaysia past president, Tengku Dato FIABCI Malaysia past president, Michael Gay, immediate past president, Dr. Yuki Su, FIABCI World elected board member, and our national committees, and every one of you all here. For those who are celebrating Chinese New Year, which is next Friday, 恭喜恭喜, and please celebrate with all the SOPs in place and have a good time, irrespective of where you're celebrating. Our hearts are together, although physically we cannot be together. And it's a wonderful deep morning with close to, I think, 80 of us gathered here. And we look forward to your next attendance next month, first Wednesday. And with that, thank you very much, everyone. To Kun Lim, thank you very much for making the time, the effort, and the very special presentation. And to everyone who is here, please take care. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Dato.
Thank you.
Yeah.